Uh, Hi, my name is Scott. Welcome back to part 2. I ended up deciding to call the channel Film Tingles because I think film, ASMR, and ASMR film were taken. Those were the obvious ones. So I went for Film Tingles. I just want to get right back into it and just start talking about some films again. That seems like the most obvious thing to do. It seems like the right thing to do. But same as always, I want to know if you've watched anything in the last week that you would like to talk about or anything you'd like to share some ideas about. I really like hearing what people have taken from films. I watched a few things this week about film criticism, and people spoke about, it's not just what is the film about. Criticism's not about just relaying what the film is about. It's about analysis and critique, and something I personally enjoy is hearing what someone in particular took from a film. I like hearing what only one person could tell me, and that being that person conveying to me what it was that they took, because no one else could tell me that. So I really like to hear what everyone thinks of everything they watch. Anyway, this week I saw Annihilation on the small screen. I saw Mary Magdalene, which I think I'll talk about last because I don't think that's out everywhere yet. So if you want to avoid spoilers, I'll put Mary Magdalene at the end. And I also saw Tomb Raider. Yeah, so I'd say Tomb Raider first because that's the big one. That's also probably the one that is least to talk about. And I think it's hard to separate Tomb Raider from the canon of every other video game film that's been made, none of which have been anything particularly special. I think technically the best, the one I would go to bat for, the one that I think is actually okay, would be Silent Hill. I think that it got the mood mostly right. It got that creepy atmosphere and the tone, and the creature design was really quite good for a film that its peers and other video game adaptations aren't necessarily all that great. I think Silent Hill really tried and got some things really right. It wasn't perfect. It didn't necessarily have the psychological horror of the video games, but it did quite well. And I have a few soft spots for Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter because growing up, those were the sort of films that I watched and thought they were really silly, but I had a good time with them, so I have some nostalgia for those films. Plus, the making of and behind the scenes of Street Fighter is absolutely wild, and potentially better than the film itself, so there's that. So Tomb Raider, this one's based on the reboot of the video game series that came out in 2013, I think. And it's the start of Lara Croft's adventures. It's a vulnerable, inexperienced Lara who hasn't had to kill before, hasn't had to fight before, because everything's just been expeditions and archaeology. It's not been, conspiracies and monsters and supernatural and all that kind of stuff. So Alicia Vikander plays a Lara who is scrappy and assertive, but in many ways untested. And there's a bit of a preamble in the film that I think takes about half an hour or 40 minutes to get going in a way that the video game just does in one big cutscene, which means it's a little slow paced. It takes a little while to get going. But as an adaptation, as something that exists already and has been translated into a different medium, it's actually alright. I went into it with pretty low expectations, as you do these days for video game films. But I was pretty satisfied overall that the story's a little different, but I think it has the same heart. I think it comes from the same place. You couldn't do everything the same, and some of the changes are quite big changes. But I think it captures the spirit of what that first rebooted game's going for. I think Alicia Vikander is the strongest part of the film. I think, straight away you see her fighting in a boxing ring, and she's clearly went out of her way and toned up for the film, and she comes across this warrior-like figure. And honestly, the shoot for this film must have been so tough, so grueling, because she gets thrown around something awful in this film. And, major respect for not being up for it. Obviously, she was up for it, but to really go through all of that, I just thought it looked like, one of those Tough Mudder type situations where you just get chucked around and do all these physical things and end up covered in muck and leaves and dirt, and she goes through the ringer with all this stuff, and it's an impressive, immersive performance from her. I think she does a really, really good job of being this Lara Croft who's new to the situation, who isn't up for getting into fights and confronting people. And I think when you watch the film, what you would take away from it is how good Alicia Vikander is. She's always good, but again, she's good again. The tomb raiding aspect of it takes a little while to get going. It's kind of like the Power Rangers reboot from last year, where there's a very, very large preamble until the actual battle starts at the end. And it comes down to whether or not you enjoy the preamble, which I did for Power Rangers, I did do for Tomb Raider. I think the mythology of everything that's happening on the island and the characters who are there and what's happening there is fun enough, silly enough to enjoy. It's not going to win any awards for originality. It's very much you kind of know what's going to happen, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the journey, and I did. So I quite enjoyed Tomb Raider more than I thought I would. It looks great. Alicia Vikander is outstanding. And yeah, it fixes some problems with the series I think it's been plagued with since the video game of the 90s, It doesn't sexualise Alicia Vikander or Lara Croft, which it'd be very easy to do in this series, because it's just Lara Croft was like one of the first virtual pin-up type characters. I'm really glad the film didn't think to go down that route. She comes across as someone who is, as I say, assertive, and she's driven by a very human thing, and everything I think of this character is personality. There's layers to her. There's care and attention being given to this Lara Croft that makes her more than just, the triangular breasts. There's a lot more to this Lara Croft than there could have been. So I'm glad that the film has done the right thing, has made her a proper character, and you do get invested in her story. Both she, Lara Croft, and she, Alicia Vikander, come across really, really great. So, it's still a video game movie. It isn't perfect, but it's a lot of fun and better than I think it had any right to be in some ways. So yeah, if you saw Tomb Raider, let me know what you think. My favourite video game of the Tomb Raider series was Tomb Raider 2, and I really enjoyed locking the butler in the big fridge, which she doesn't do in the film, so how representative of the video game can it actually be. Anyway, Annihilation. By the way, it's snowing outside right now, and it's absolutely lovely. It's very soothing to talk this quietly and watch snow just swirling around outside. Annihilation. Okay. So not being in America or in China, I had to watch Annihilation on my TV. Not the smallest screen, but a smaller screen. And I think it's a shame that happened. I think if it comes down to people not going to see Mother in particular, then it's a shame, because that film was always going to divide people. That was always going to be controversial, and it wasn't going to be for everyone. Whereas I think Annihilation is for everyone who's a fan of sci-fi, of films that don't patronise the viewer. I don't think it would divide people the way that a risky film would. And with a budget of 40 million, an international rollout would probably have been okay. With good word of mouth, it probably would have been fine. And it's a shame that Paramount, as we say in Scotland, bottled it. They really just did not give it the attention that it deserved. And seeing all the glowing reviews and all the interviews that have come since its release, because people are so obsessed with how multifaceted it is, it deserved something a bit bigger than this. It deserved more than just to go straight to your TV. And that's not snobbishness towards Netflix. I think if it had always been the case that it was going straight to Netflix, then fair enough. But it's the fact that it wasn't meant to be doing that originally. It was meant to be a worldwide release, and then it wasn't. And this was the way out financially. It's a bit of a shame that that's what happened. Anyway, I loved Annihilation to the point that I went and bought the book. I'm about halfway through so far. It's quite different, but it captures the same spirit, the same feeling that everything happening is not meant to be happening, of the feeling that you're seeing something that you probably shouldn't be seeing. And that's a kind of horror that I've never been able to put into words. It's the kind of horror that I have these very specific fears of numbers stations and of video game glitches, and I think it's that idea that you're seeing something that you're not meant to have seen, and it's the idea of something going wrong that shouldn't go wrong. You know, a video game glitch isn't meant to happen, and in some ways in the film, the shimmer represents nature, nature's glitch. It's the idea that something, the natural order of things has failed, and now humanity is having to come to grips with not inhumanity but non-humanity, somewhere that that life cannot exist. And for me, Annihilation has been about that fear that stuck with me ever since. That fear that something is capital W wrong. Everything has failed. And that comes down to, I even saw, I read an interview with, I think it was Ben Salisbury. Oh, it will be Ben Salisbury, yeah, my mistake. Ben Salisbury, the composer. Because people have really taken to that little sinister sound that happens in like the last half hour of the film. That little scientific, sci-fi, almost Close Encounters-esque few notes that really sticks with you, and it's really, I've never heard something so simple, so melodic, be so terrifying. If you want to listen to it on the score, on the album, it's under the track The Alien. And it's a really scary little moment. And it helps that the visuals as well are just, they're awe-inspiring, but they're also downright terrifying. It is a horror film, but I think it's marketed more as a sci-fi film, and it should be marketed as a sci-fi film. The themes in it, you know, things about cancer and depression and self-destruction, they all come together in a big synthesis in a way that really, really works, and those are the talking points. But the way that the fear strikes you in that last half hour in particular, and in some of the sound design, in particular a certain sound that a creature makes, I've watched the film only once, but I've only had to watch it once because it's replaying in my head over and over. The sound design of that creature and the sound that it makes is harrowing. And I wonder if the fear is personal and specific, because some people haven't reacted to it this way at all. They saw a very cleverly designed sci-fi film, which it is, but the horror seems to have stuck with some people more than others. And as for the themes, I think that tying depression to cancer to self-destruction makes a lot of sense, and it becomes very human. It ties the biological to the mental and to the actions that come with that, and what we do in the name of self-destruction. And it's funny to talk about something like that that's so personal, it's so weighty, in a film that's also got all these scientific sci-fi elements that are completely otherworldly, literally and metaphorically, completely non-human, inhuman, but come together to make something that is a sensory experience. That's why it's a shame that it's not on big screens in cinemas, because it is overwhelmingly visual and oral, what you take from it. is only half what you're told to take from it, and what the story says is also how the story feels. It's that feeling of going with the expedition, with Natalie Portman's character and the others into the shimmer, and how if you go with them personally as a viewer, then you go through everything they do and you feel everything they do. You know, if at the other end it feels like you blink your eyes and you can still see that iridescent shimmer of the shimmer. And if a film sticks with you like that, then that's a work of extreme marvel, you know. My favourite films are usually something really personal. So far this year it's been like Lady Bird or Columbus. But then there's the technical achievements that are just outstanding. Something like Phantom Thread that I also really love. And Shape of Water, I think, kind of combines everything I love, and from the human to the fairy tale, and puts it into one. And then Annihilation doesn't really fit under any of them, but it's really stuck with me. And if at the end of the year I don't consider this, you know, a top 10, then it's going to be a hell of a year. But right now it's the one I can't stop thinking of. As I say, the book is it's I'm only halfway through it, and not a lot has happened so far, but enough has happened for me to see that this is absolute inspiration for what Alex Garland has done. But he's taken what he needed to take to make a film out of it, whereas this is a mood piece that you sort of join in halfway through, whereas the film of Annihilation takes place from the start. And I know it's the film cover, but Asda didn't have the other cover, so apologies. As far as book covers go, it's not a bad book cover. So the other film I saw this week was Mary Magdalene, the new Garth Davis film. His last film was Lion, which I really enjoyed. And this one isn't the same type of film at all. Lion was very narrative. You get very invested in the little boy's story and wanting him to get home again. Whereas Mary Magdalene is quite a spiritual film. I think my immediate reaction was to compare it to Terrence Malick's Tree of Life. But I have to say that I am in no way religious, have very, very little religious knowledge. What I know about religion could fill a shot glass. I do not know anything about it. So I had to take it at face value, at what was in front of me. And what it was a spiritual experience that's quite sparse, quite dreamy, quite impressionistic. And it follows the character of Mary Magdalene in the story that is usually, you know, Jesus' story. We follow him the same way that his disciples follow him. We follow him and what he does and what I know of how he spreads the word of God. But we see how Mary Magdalene fits into his story and sort of reclaims a story from a woman who has been wronged by history in the same way that many women have been wronged by history. It's only touched on ever so slightly at the very end how history has dismissed her as a prostitute when actually there doesn't seem to be any evidence that she was in any way a sex worker or anything of the sort. It just seemed to be a way at the time to try and smear her name for some reason. But again, as I say, I don't know anything about religion. I wouldn't presume to comment on that part. But what we see is the character of Mary Magdalene is someone who's very understanding and very graceful, and she seems to understand what Jesus is and God's message is more than, you know, the men. She seems to be the one who she sees the men as soldiers, where she sees herself as a preacher. She takes whatever Jesus says as gospel, and she doesn't mind that it's vague. She doesn't mind that she doesn't know what the end goal is, whereas the men all want a literal, tangible kingdom. So the film becomes about understanding and patience and love and attention. She doesn't mind how vague everything is, whereas the men definitely want to know where they're going, and they need that path laid out in front of them. They follow Jesus because they think he's literally taking them somewhere, where she follows him because she feels it's the right thing to do. She believes that he's going to make a better world in the world they already live in, rather than take them to another world. You see her have these virtues of mercy and of grace and of understanding. And it's that which I think the film centers around. It's that idea of being a good person, but at the same time reclaiming this person's story, which has been completely dismissed for all these centuries. Obviously, I can't comment on the religious part of it, so what I took from it is a sort of spirituality of love, of how faith can guide you in whatever way it needs to guide you, and how it's immensely personal and different for each person. So that's why I ended up comparing it to something like Terrence Malick, because I know that Tree of Life is the same sort of thing, but with a general vague sense of the spiritual, whereas this is much more rooted in predetermined religion. You know, it's about Christianity, or the formation of Christianity. So there are things that people will latch onto if they know about those things. What I had to do was latch on to virtues and ideas and cinematography and see what it was that collectively made for me, and I ended up enjoying it much more than I thought it would. I thought it would be impenetrable for someone who doesn't know about religion at all, but you end up taking from a film, a good film, what's there for you to take. So I actually enjoyed it. I don't think that is the critical consensus, but I was surprised that I really felt something. I think it's worth ending on a note of, it was Johan Johansson's last ever score, and he does a magnificent job of threading the whole thing together. I think without the score, the film wouldn't have worked for me the way that it does. I think it'd be very easy to take a biblical story and make the music all, big strings, angelic choirs, heavenly symphonies. But instead, the music's quite sometimes dissonant and sometimes quite terrifying and overpowering. And I think it's because when you see Jesus' miracles, maybe you're told that a miracle is inherently a good thing, but actually, imagine seeing someone rise from the dead. It would be a scary, an existentially horrifying experience to know that the natural order of things, that someone dies and they are dead, but then someone comes along and changes that. You would think on paper that's a happy moment, but actually there's a lot of emotions going on there, and Johan Johansson's score absolutely knows that. It's framed as something that is both to be in awe of and to be absolutely frightened of. And that nuance that really shows you that Johan Johansson, he just understood cinema. He just knew what was required of him. And he knew how to completely change a film that could have been one thing and made it smarter and more nuanced and more. It gave me a way in when a film might not have. If it had been overtly biblical, overtly Christian, I would not have found myself in this film. But his music brought me in. And I think that's the best thing you could say about a composer, is that without them, the film wouldn't have been what it is. It's still a tragic loss, and it'll always be a tragic loss to cinema what happened. But it's what a wonderful thing to know that he's going out on a high note, a final piece of work that just shows the standard that he always had for himself. Without it, Mary Magdalene would not be the film that it is for me, and I'm going to miss him, everyone's going to miss him, and cinema is not the same place without him. So yeah. Again, let me know if you've seen any of these films. Let me know what films you have seen. Tonight I'm going to go see World of Tomorrow, Don Hertzfeld's film. They're showing part 1 and 2 at a local cinema, and I haven't seen part 2 yet. Part 1 is one of my favourite films, so I'm really looking forward to it. And to see it on the big screen will be really special. So, let me know what you've seen. Let me know what you're going to see. If you've seen these films, let me know what you thought of them. And yeah, we'll be back next week. Take care.